So I'm here to talk to you about a system, a tool for managing difficult client communications. So sometimes our client communications can look a lot like this, right? I want to make a note that our method is not, it's not a mystical silver bullet. It's not going to fix all conversations, but it's a framework for you to be able to control your response to conflict. Also, I'm not the best person to train you in this that I know, but I am your trainer. So I will do my best, and if you ask a question that I can't answer, I will do my best to get you the answer. Is that fair? All right, thank you. So show of hands, how many people have difficult conversations inside or out of the office? Oh, good, I'm not alone. So let me start by giving credit where credit is due. I learned this as a volunteer for the American Model United Nations organization. They in turn adapted it from the model by Dr. Tichy. You can look him up in his work. There are other variations on how to use his structure. But as a volunteer staff member for 18 years, GRIPI, the tool that I'm going to talk to you about today, is one of the most important and persistent contributions that we give to our staff members. As staff members, we talk about the use of GRIPI outside of the conference, offline, to each other, like, oh, I did it this way. And it's that sharing of information that we'll talk about later that makes it a very powerful tool. And we use it both professionally and interpersonally. The professional aspect, or the professional development aspect of GRIPI has become one of our marketing draws for new staff members, because as young people coming out of college going into their first real work environment, it gives them a way to communicate and understand how to deal with conflict that they might experience. So I'm hoping it's as powerful for you as it is for them. So as we go through the agenda, I need you to, I ask you to consider the customers with whom you have the most difficult conversations. Take note of examples that you have where this tool could be useful in that relationship, because time permitting, I'm gonna give you the opportunity to share, and we can talk through how GRIPI could have been a valuable tool in that conversation, or could be a valuable tool that you can take this away and actually use it. The real life examples that you're going to share will make this a more valuable experience for everybody in the audience. And if I'm talking too fast, which has a habit of happening, please be like, bring it down, bring it down. Okay. Whew. All right. Also, feel free to ask questions throughout the program, and I will try to invite people to ask questions. But if I forget, don't let me do that. Like, raise your hand. I'm here to share. And if something's not clear, I want to make sure that it's clear. Okay. So this is GRIPI. Stands for goals, roles, information, process, and interpersonal. We're going to go through each letter and apply them to our own experiences, and we're going to use them to identify sources of resolution. It's important to note that from the original conflict management study that this was based off of, the order is hierarchical. 80% of all the conflict that they studied happens in goals. It felt or looked like interpersonal, but in fact it was a goals issue. And when you can get to that point and see that most of the conflicts that you're happening is because the parties are coming together with different goals in mind, resolution happens faster. And after that, 80% of the results are roles, and then information, and then process, and then interpersonal. So goals. It's equally as important to understand another person's goal as to be able to articulate your own in a conversation, a project, any interaction, right? Roles. Who's responsible? Anybody know RACI? Responsible. Who's responsible? Who's accountable? Who's consulted? And who's informed? You have to know who are the players, who are the stakeholders in this conversation, in this project. Information. Is everybody starting from the same place? Is everybody clear about where they're going or what they need to know to keep going? Process. Does everyone know how to request things? How to request a change, or how to communicate success, or how to communicate failure? Do they understand what's the process to move forward after your communication? Interpersonal. And this is the one that we all feel like is the source of conflict. This is common, like, that guy's an asshole. Oops. But that's what we're trying to get away from. That's the trap of emotion that if you can remove yourself from that emotional experience, you can see that it's not an interpersonal position. So our goal is to move away from this response as the actual source of the conflict. Instead, we want to identify the other actors in the communication and understand how other individuals or groups interact with the process and with the goals and whatnot. Tracy, could you bring me some water? It's good to have team members in your audience. As a note, this has evolved over the last 20 years for the Model United Nations. The original GRIPI does not include information, but we thought, thank you very much. We said, you know what? In the environment that we work in for the conference, information is actually a place where people get stuck, and so we added it to explain the another layer of information, or another layer of breakdown. So as you use it, feel free to hone it. That's the point. Okay, so let me talk about a recent GRIPI experience I had as an introduction to the system. So I have a customer who's 10 years old and looks remarkably like me. If anybody here's a parent, you're gonna maybe understand or relate to this story a little better. So let me lay out the scenario. He'd just come home from a long weekend with Grandma and Grandpa, and they'd arrived late and he hadn't slept much. And so then the next day, he got up and he went to robotics club, and then he went over to his friend's house and they had a fight, and then he comes home and it's almost dinner time, and as parents who recognize the danger signs, we were like, we gotta get this kid fed. Like, he's gonna get hangry and it's no fun. So we said, you need to eat, buddy. Like, it's like, hey, what do you want? Right? We were like really trying to get him to eat. And he just wasn't hungry, and that's fair. And then we got the email from his teacher that said he forgot to finish an assignment from last week. And so we said, no more computer time until you're done with the homework. And that's when the breakdown happened, right? Does anybody recognize any of this happening? Okay, all right, good, then I'm not alone here. My reaction was to go straight to the emotional, right? He and I know how to trigger each other. And so I went to the interpersonal, and I'm like, oh, I'm a bad dad. I'm so mean. Like, I'm pushing him too hard. Like, I didn't set him up for success. Like, that's my space. Like, that's where I go. And I don't know about you, but that's not a really effective place to act from. Like, my focus was on me and not feeling like a bad dad, right? Like, I wasn't thinking about the solution to the actual situation. This is the trap that we're trying to get away from. So to get myself under control, what I did in the moment was I said, okay, what's my role? I'm a parent, so I need to fix this, right? Like, what's the process to fix this? How do I calm this down? How do I calm him down? And I was able to do it, and we got him fed. And because I was preparing for this presentation, I then took the step back and I debriefed, I triaged myself on what did I do, and I compared it, my intuitive response and the GRIPI response, right? And because of it, I actually came to something of an epiphany about me as a parent, because I was thinking about, like, what's the goal of this conversation, and like, what's the, like, I was trying to break it down through all the GRIPI pieces, and what it comes down to is my goal as a parent. So I can, when I'm clear about my goal as a parent, I can see what my role needs to be in any situation, and I can see if I'm missing any information that would help me do the role better, but I understand the process that I need to do to move forward, right? And my goal is to allow my son to be the best person he can be, always, right? I'm there not to fix things, but to facilitate him. I want him to learn and to grow. And when I'm clear about that situation, that my options are clearer to move forward. Like, he's having a breakdown, that's okay. Like, it's not, I don't have to get triggered, I don't have to get emotional about it. I have to find a way to make him learn through this experience how to help control himself in the future, right? How to recognize, like, I'm hungry, and if I'm hungry, I get angry, right? Whatever it happens to be. So for me, it alleviates the internal judgment and allows me to see the situation and the solutions more clearly. So this is a blanket simplification, right? Like, but I hope that helps you understand, like, GRIPI is a way to organize yourself. And if you start at the top, you can see the results a little bit more clearly. So I had it backwards. From the interpersonal, the goal that I thought I had was to not be a bad parent, right? And it was not, the focus was on me. But from the goal of being a good parent, or an effective parent, maybe I shouldn't use the word good, the interpersonal isn't about me. It's about him and making sure that he understands the rules and the processes, right? Okay, so how does it apply to you? Well, that depends. Who are you? Sure, customers are the people who pay you, right? But they're also internal customers. Anybody here have coworkers they might have difficult conversations with? Paul, raise your hand. Okay, that's my boss. The system can also be used with partners and spouses and as I mentioned, family. As a note, it can be a very useful tool with spouses, right up until they realize that you're using GRIPI with them. That's a voice of experience there. So you're gonna use the tool differently based on the method or the medium of your communication. If it's a face-to-face conversation, if it's an email, or if you're planning for a training or an agenda, GRIPI can give you the tool to organize your thoughts, right? And then you can use the social and cultural expectations of that medium as the framework for GRIPI, right? Also, GRIPI works better when you come to the table with your eyes open. So for Ammon, it's pretty easy. We do the same thing over and over for the last 28 years or whatever. We run a conference for college students and create a model of the United Nations for 4 days. But if you look at your own life, don't you also do the same thing over and over year after year? If you generalize a little bit. So I don't know about you, but I can personally look at my own mistakes and either personally or professionally, and I can see a pattern in the errors I make or the responses I have to the errors. And if you look at your own patterns for consistent scenarios of conflict or of difficult conversations, it will speed you up in creating your own personal or organizational cheat sheet of phrases and actions you can take to manage these conflicts. Because that cheat sheet is a whole lot easier than trying to deal with it in the moment. Does anybody have any questions? I told you I'd ask for questions and I haven't done that. Anybody have any questions so far? Okay, great. Okay, so let me know if any of this sounds familiar. So you get frustrated when you talk and the customer, whether internal or external, their response doesn't make any sense to your, like it doesn't seem to answer your question or be consistent with the scenario that you're dealing with. Or their actions seem to fall outside of the norm that you would expect from them, right? They're suddenly doing something that is outside of what's normal. This is that cognitive dissonance of like, that's weird. Like that's one of the identifiers that will allow you to say, maybe I should GRIPI this situation. Like, is there a goal in the project or the task that has not been communicated successfully, right? Or are they expecting me to be in a different role right now? Or maybe am I expecting them to have a different role in this conversation. It's that it's post-experience of that cognitive dissonance, excuse me, that we need to debrief and triage. And sometimes you can do it in the moment and like find a solution. And sometimes you have to back away and think about it and respond. But the point is, we need to go back and clean up that conversation. And sometimes they'll melt away and we forget because we're getting older, and that's fine. But if you want to maintain and grow that relationship, it's important to not let these things build up because they can. And suddenly, a year down the line, you're having these terrible conversations, and it's because you've had all these goal and role expectations that you haven't been meeting each other at the same place, right? So that's you kind of have to take it one step at a time, and just like the little things do make a difference. So let's talk about some real life, actual scenarios that help understand and identify GRIPI. Okay, does anybody remember Freaky Friday, the movie? Can I show of hands, right? Who here remembers the conflict within Freaky Friday, right? Okay, using GRIPI, where was the source of conflict for the characters in Freaky Friday? Anybody?
What do you mean by the source of conflict?
So is it a goals conflict? Is it a roles conflict? Is it missing information? Do they not understand the process? Like, where's GRIPI? Where can GRIPI identify the source of conflict in Freaky Friday?
Roles.
Yeah, they both have the same goal. If you don't know the movie, they switch bodies. Like it's a mother-daughter thing. It's really I think it actually, never mind. So they switch bodies, and then they're trying to figure out how to go back to their own bodies. And it's not so much the fact of not knowing how to go back to their own bodies that makes the breakdown. It's that they don't know how to act as the parent and the daughter. Like, they don't understand their role, and it creates drama. That's how GRIPI is useful. The Federation and the Borg. Anybody clear about what the breakdown is here? Where does GRIPI identify the breakdown between the Borg and the Federation? It's a goals problem. One wants peace through assimilation, and one wants peace through understanding, and those two you can't have those two together, right? So there is, until one of them comes to consent, or until they come to consensus as a group about where they want to go, there's no moving forward between those two. Okay, The Sixth Sense. Where was the breakdown in this movie? It was information. It would have been a much shorter movie if he had said, I see dead people like you. Like, 10 minutes and we're done, right? All right, Captain America and Iron Man in the Civil War, Marvel Civil War. This one's a lot harder. In my opinion, anyway. There's no right answer, by the way, right? I'm just trying to give you my sense of a way to understand the conflict. Anyone? Okay. So they both know what their goal is. They both want to be good guys. They both want to protect people and be the good guy. They have differences of opinion on their role. Captain America says they individually have the responsibility to control their superpowers, where Tony Stark says we need to be responsible to a government so that we're not liable, or we're not like, there's more people are involved in the decision-making process. Right? It's a roles conflict. If they had done GRIPI, a lot less chaos, whole lot less mayhem, much less blowing up. Okay, trains, planes, and automobiles. Anybody? Breakdown? Does anybody remember the movie? That's maybe a place okay, there's a couple of you that remember the movie. They know the goal, they want to get home. They know their roles, more or less. The process, how do we get home, they disagree on, and that causes the conflict. They're also both jerks, so there's a lot of interpersonal there. And they can't communicate. Okay, this one's great for GRIPI. There are so many conflicts. In those 7 books, you can look at a couple of really, we'll just start with 4. Harry and Snape. Where's the breakdown? It feels like interpersonal. They hate each other, right? They hate each other. Where's the breakdown between Harry and Snape in all 7 books? Goals. No, they do have the same goal. They do have the same goal, but they don't know they have the same goal. That's why it's information. No, there's no right answer. That's what my team said also, and I'll respectfully disagree. It's a goals issue. Had they known that they both had the same goal, that they had grippied and said, what's our goal here? They would have found out right at the beginning, like, oh, we both want to fight the Dark Lord. Oh, solid. Let's at least be civil to one another. It brings down the level of tension. Okay, Hermione punches Malfoy in the one with the hippogriff. I don't remember if it was Goblet of Fire or the one before it. The Azkaban, Prisoner of Azkaban. She punches Malfoy in the face. Right, best scene in the whole movie. It's interpersonal. That's nothing. There's no goal issue. There's no role issue. They come together and they refuse to accept each other as human beings and their position. And that happens sometimes. Dumbledore and Harry. Information. Dumbledore is great at not telling Harry enough to survive. Like, he's a really lucky kid. There's no reason he should have survived all that. Okay, Ron and Harry, but specifically in the Goblet of Fire. They'd stop being friends. There's a whole lot of tension between the two of them. For most of the book, they're no longer speaking to each other. I'm sorry if this is a spoiler alert. I should have warned you guys. Oh, sorry. No, the movies. Like, it doesn't matter. Okay. So, Harry and Ron, it's an information again, because had Ron known and accepted the information that Harry had not put his name into the goblet, that tension would have dissipated, and it gets proven to him, and so he eventually gets past that information blockage. But that's the breakdown in that relationship. Where am I in time? Whew, boy. Okay. So there's one more series that is really good for showing systems or scenarios of breakdowns. The Lord of the Rings. Board meetings. Okay. Council of Elrond. All the races come together to talk about how they need to destroy or do something with the rings so that Sauron can't take over the world. Okay. So it looks like a process problem because they disagree about how to get rid of the ring. Like, they're like, oh, we need to smash it, or we need to use it, or we need to hide it, or whatever. But what the real solution is when Gandalf does a GRIPI check, and he makes sure that everybody's clear that there is only one how, that you have to drop it into Mount Doom, and that if you don't destroy it, Sauron will get it, right? Like, that was the tipping point for that conversation. The information had to be clear. Everybody had to start from the same position of like, oh, there is only one way to destroy the ring. Team members. Conflict happens because Merry and Pippin, it's an information one again, they don't know that not everybody has second breakfasts and 11s, and they would have been much happier had they known, or at least been able to compensate. Okay, team meetings. The trolls in The Hobbit. Maybe it was it was in The Hobbit. So let me lay it out for you if you don't know the movies. The trolls have captured a bunch of dwarves, and they're trying to decide how to eat them. And the Hobbit is in the conversation as well, but the trolls are like disagreeing about how to eat it. They all have the same goal. We're going to eat the dwarves. They have the same roles, or they understand the roles: food and trolls. But the process, it looks like a process breakdown, right? Because they're trying to decide, oh, do we cook them or squash them or bake them or whatever? Like, they go through a lot and eventually they die because they can't make a decision. Now, most of our decision makings in team meetings are not that drastic, but it's not actually a process problem. It looks like a process problem, but if you consider the Hobbit, what looks like an outside interactor, as part of that conversation, he has a goal of not getting the dwarves fed or eaten, and the trolls have a different goal. And that breakdown is what allows the trolls to turn to stone. Okay. I'm really speeding through. There's a lot of conversation that we could have about these, and it's fun. So I'm just trying to, like, are you getting it? Like there's a way to look at a conflict to see, like, at what point is the conflict happening? Okay. So why and when should we use GRIPI? So I'm going to go through 3 like different kinds of scenarios, versions of the scenario. There's the instant and the unstructured. You're on a phone call, and it's a high emotion, and you can use this to de-escalate, right? If you can remember GRIPI when you're being yelled at, which is not an easy thing, by the way, you can use it to consider the situation dispassionately, and you remove the emotions from the conversation. You can look at it as this is a breakdown in goals, roles, process, information, goals, roles, information, processor, interpersonal, and not about you, right? Like my example with my son. It becomes more about doing your job for your client than about you, right? And if you don't have situations where you get yelled at, I'll get you a form because we want you to speak at next year's conference. There's the instant and the structured. So this is when you've got a situation where there's a norm, like there's an expectation. This is a structured situation. We all have roles, like we understand what's happening. Team meetings, board meetings, all those are structured environments. So in the middle of a meeting, suddenly it's going off the rails, and you're talking about things that aren't on the agenda anymore. That's not the original intent of this meeting. This is when you get to use something called the GRIPI check, and it's a very useful tool with the American Model United Nations because everybody comes to the table knowing this situation, and what that means I'm asking the leader to make sure that everybody's clear on what's the goal right now, what are our roles. Does everybody working from the same information? Like there's a breakdown happening. I'm asking the authority figure to do a GRIPI check. It's a word that we use that you don't have to use outside of this, but it's the idea of like, okay, everybody, hold on. Whoa. We seem to be going off the rails. Can I make sure that we're all talking about the same thing right now? And the idea is let's get back to the agenda. It can be done by anybody, but it's very effective when the authority figure in the meeting does the GRIPI check or does the conversation around the GRIPI check. But that's not necessary. And then the last one is planning, and we'll get to this a little bit at the end. Hopefully, I'll have time. Another effective use of GRIPI is not in the moment to fix something, but is in the planning stage to make sure that you're communicating each of these points to other people. So it takes it from the implicit to the explicit. Like, from my speech, do you know what your goal is right now? Do you know what your role is? Do you know what my role is? Are we working from the same kind of level of information? Is there anything that I'm missing to make this useful? So I've got a friend who works as a project manager in a large tech, in the tech industry, and she uses GRIPI for the 30, 60, 90-day review sessions for projects. And it's effective for them because her agenda has 5 items, and they are goals, roles, information, process, and interpersonal. Like, let's make sure that these are the things that we're trying to cover. And at the 30, 60, 90-day marks, they change, but they are consistent. And so the people in her organization know when they're coming to her meeting what to expect. So any other questions? Any questions so far about GRIPI and the use of GRIPI? Okay. Okay, so does anybody have any scenarios that they would like to share with the group of a difficult conversation or interaction scenario that they would like us to discuss, or they have a position that you think you know where the GRIPI breakdown is? If not, you're going to have to listen to mine, and they're not nearly as fun. OK, I gave you a chance. So here I am arguing with my boss, who's sitting in the room. Goals can change at the speed of business, right? So I'm discussing a troubled client project with my boss, and I'm arguing for a hard line. We need to follow the scope, or we need to make sure that they pay before we launch, or whatever. Like I don't remember the specifics of the conversation. But he and I went back and forth for minutes of wasted time, where we were just like trying to get each other to understand, and we weren't. There was no connection, right? That we weren't connecting on the conversation. I had to come to the realization that his goal for the client had changed. He had gone from the conversation about the short-term need right now, which is where I was stuck, to the long-term relationship with this client and what he felt we needed as an organization to be doing, right? He's an entrepreneur. They changed their mind a lot. But had I used GRIPI, I could have been like, what's your goal in this conversation? Or what's your goal for this client? Because I don't feel like I'm hearing you right now. And all that would have done is made it a little bit faster, and then we wouldn't have been scowling at each other quite as long. But it's those little conversations that you can say like, once I realized that his conversation was no longer about the actual need for this short-term solution, but he had moved on to like, it's not as big a deal. I need to think about the long-term solution for this client. Then I could toe the line like a good little project manager. So the only difference is I could have done it faster, right? OK, and I think the question I would have asked him at that point was, what's your goal with this client, right? Is it containment or is it assimilation? Like, does that spur any thoughts, any conversations, any questions? Yeah.
So I had a goals issue.
OK.
I was working for an agency that was moving from a traffic model to a project management model.
Okay.
And there was an existing traffic manager, and she needed me.
Right.
Because I was the first PM. So we had this goals conflict, and honestly, it never got resolved. And I would love to know how I could have done that.
Sure. Sure. OK. So let me repeat in case it wasn't clear. She was moving into a new position that was being created. The organization was going from a traffic model to a project management model. And she was the first PM, and the traffic manager was, they've never been able to resolve they were never able to resolve that conflict. So in that situation, and I don't know the realities of the working environment, but do you both think you had the same goals?
Ultimately, I think we both have the same goals.
So one place to start is you restate the goal. Like, so just so we're clear, and it has to be a moment of interaction, right? Like, so there seems to be a little tension right now. I want to be clear that what my goal right now is to move the company forward, make sure that we're on time, like whatever it was, like however you articulated. It's important that you come to that first point together, that then she realizes that you're having a different kind of conversation than an argument, right? You have to move back and be like, OK, so are we talking about this same goal? And if you're both at the same place there, then you get to talk about, so this is how I understand my position in that, and this is how I see what you're doing, and how that you're important to this conversation. Make sure that you come to the same place there too. It's just using that framework of saying like, okay, I get that what you've been doing for a long time is changing, and I'm sorry that that's hard, and I'm here to help you, or like I'm not trying to destroy your relationship with your like, we don't know. you don't actually know necessarily, maybe you do, what the source of conflict internalized was for her. Like for her, it might feel like you're butting in, you're destroying her relationship with her friend, like she never gets to see her friend anymore because they talked all the time. Like you have to like understand what the scenario is for her. But if you can move it to, are we working on the same goal? Do we understand each other's roles? And is there a role that you expect me to be playing that I'm not playing, or that I am playing that you don't want me to play? And because if it is, then you can take it back to the organization and say like, okay, we're having a problem working together. Can you help me understand what, you know, because sometimes you just need to push it up the ladder, right? Thank you, that's great. Anybody else have any spouses? Goals, problems with spouses are the worst. Anyway.
So is this really just for conflict resolution, or do you sometimes go over this as soon as you start working together with somebody, kind of like, hey, we're about to work through this process together as a company, let's then do that?
Right, so you, at the Model United Nations, we will start with a conversation about this is our goal. If you look at their training documents, the trainer always has goals, roles, information, process as pieces, the beginning of their document for their training. It's before their agenda. It's before the topic that they're going to talk about in the specifics. The organizer needs to know what the goals are, right? And if it helps them articulate it. You don't have to say goal, role, information, and process, right? But you do need to check in to make sure that worked. At the end, I think I've got a slide that will help you understand how I used it for this presentation to communicate those pieces. Other questions, comments? Robin?
It makes me think support when we get people that they're like on version 2 and they're end users. Mm-hmm. They're not developers, they don't know anything, they're developers long gone. And they send them to me because something broke. We're not going to fix it for them. We don't want them on support. We want you guys on support, right? But I try to articulate that what we both want is for it to get fixed. Let me give you some options. Yeah. I can hook you up with a developer. I can try and walk you through it. Here's how we can get you where you want to be. But they want me to fix it, and I'm not going to log in and fix it for them. That's not what we do.
Yeah, they need to, right. Yeah. So I'm going to repeat it so that it's a useful example for anybody watching the video. Robin does support for EE, and if people call in with a broken site or an issue that's happening, she knows that the goals are the same, that they're both trying to fix the site, right? But she has to have them understand that her role is not to fix it, but to get them to someone that fixes them, or she allows them to understand that she is not that level of support. She is a information. She disseminates the information of like where else they can go or what else they can do. So that was excellent. Thank you. Any other comments? How are we doing on time? Okay. Sue and Ryan the Pixel Monkey. Nice lady named Sue just had a great nonprofit that tried to get art into the lives of children who were less fortunate. Really, we could all stand behind that goal. The issue was a roles problem when she was sitting behind Ryan, my designer's desk, like behind his chair, and pixel by pixel was telling him what to do. And that was a roles problem. That created conflict in our office because he's not a pixel monkey. He does not move things over. He will tell you about why he would or wouldn't do that, but your job is not as a client to like tell him exactly how many so it was a conversation that needed to happen, and I don't know if it ever was very successful with her. Okay, so this I only added it because I didn't have any Indiana Jones references, and my boss likes to say this all the time. So I want to play an audio for you, and we're going to see how well you can hear it.
Yes, so I suggest we pull the website, go back to the old one. This is ridiculous. Give me a call. Nothing is connected. There's the old catalog on there. There's no Rolex that we talked about, which I can understand that one, but my God, call me.
That was 45 minutes. That was a 45-minute conversation. That was a very, very angry business owner who had stepped away from the project and had given it to his daughter because he'd gotten sick or something. I can't remember the details anymore. I've really blanked out that whole project. He had walked away, and she had said, let's do this thing. And we said, we cannot in this timeline. And it was like for the holidays or something, they needed something live immediately. And we said, we can't do that, but we can do these things. And she approved that. But the approval never got back to him, right? And for him, it looked like a goal problem and maybe a roles problem. But what it all came down to was he was working from a different set of information. The goal was the same. Let's get something up by this date that works. And our role as the developer and his daughter's role as the lead and his role as... So anyway, we launch it. She gets sick, and he comes back online, and then I get this phone call, right? So it sometimes happens, and it's a real life thing. So what are the key pieces of information that our clients need to know? Like generally, what are the types of things that our clients need to know all the time? Timeline, cost, outcomes, right? The scope documents. She did a really great presentation. If you weren't here, you should watch it. Patrice, right? Oh yeah. These are the things that we communicate, and to be effective, we need to make sure that they're always communicated and regularly communicated. So those are often breakdown points. Okay, so this is my great-great-grandfather who was a Prussian soldier. And the point of this slide is not all information is important. When you talk about information, more is not better. The point is having the same, coming from the same place. I'm going to skip Hiltred, but that was a good one too. Whew. Okay, so interpersonal. These are always the fun ones because there are interpersonal breakdowns. Like sometimes two scenarios. So I have this client who once a year would write us an email, and we were like, oh my God, we are about to get fired. Like, it was the most tense and terse and uncaring Minnesotan email you'd ever seen, right? And so we were like, oh, we get on the call, and it always comes down to he doesn't communicate that way. It's not an interpersonal breakdown in the sense that he's angry or he's a jerk. He just doesn't deal with us that way. Like, that's not his emotional space. I have to deal with him as a human in a different way. Like, he deals with information by being like, do this, be done by tomorrow. And he's not trying to be a jerk. He's just being like, I need this done. Could you please have it done by tomorrow? Words make a difference when we communicate. But as it's becoming incumbent on me to recognize, like, oh, this is Craig. This is how he writes. I don't have to get emotionally triggered. The second scenario, let me deal with a second. So a former partner agency, when finding out that I was returning from my international living and was going to continue working at Creative Arc, said to my boss, he is like a sticky booger that you just can't get rid of. So we just don't get along. And if I ever have to work with him, it becomes incumbent on me to recognize that I don't have to make him my friend. Like, I want my clients to be my friends. Like, I just like that kind of a relationship. I get to tell them honestly, like, I want to help you, and what you're asking for isn't doable, is dumb, like whatever. But I don't want to be a jerk about it. I want to have a positive relationship with everyone I work with. And I don't have to try that with him. And that just alleviates an effort, right? Okay, so some takeaway phrases. This is really just things that I was like, how do I, writing down some of the ideas of things you can say in these situations. These are not for you. The point is to have your own list. Because if you, remember that scenario that I was talking about? If you can create your list of scenarios, like I always seem to have this kind of breakdown or this kind of conversation, like if let me try doing this. Like what if I were like to break away from that conversation and try using this one? And then try it. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, get rid of it. But communicate to each other or share with within your organization, like, this is the way that we can communicate. Like, I'm having a goals problem right now. I feel like there's a difference in goal. Or I don't really know what my role in this conversation is right now. And it's important that you create your short list, because it's a whole lot harder to do it on the fly if you don't have that starting point. So GRIPI is used in planning, as I mentioned. So I used GRIPI in preparation for this communication. So in the introduction, I tried to make pretty explicitly what my goal was. And on slide 3, I invited you to be a partner in the process. So let me go to that one. So this was my attempt to say, this is what I'm expecting of you. This is what I want you to expect from me, right? So we had the same goals, and we knew what our roles were. I gave you the information about GRIPI and context for the usage and where to find it, where to find more information. And I also told you how to interact with me. I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to ask you to ask me questions. Like, I gave us the space in which to interact. And then I gave the interpersonal in this case is I gave myself the latitude to be wrong or imperfect, right? And that made it a whole lot easier for me personally. Like, I tried to make myself as human as possible. I'm not on a pedestal. I'm not perfect. I don't know everything. That made it easier for me to work with you and not feel that pressure. I also invited you to participate at your level of comfort. I was looking at you as human beings and saying, you get to choose. I'm not going to call on you or you or you. Like, it was this wasn't a lecture, right? Okay, so that's GRIPI in a nutshell, and I hope that you're walking away with some valuable piece. Does anybody have any questions before we're done? Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your day, and enjoy the rest of your day.